Hey guys, welcome back. Robocraft Early Access coverage. This is episode 24. I'm Enigmius, and today we're building our first Tier 10 robot. This is the Pretty Hate Machine, the Plasma Hover. We showed the prototype at the end of the last episode. If you missed it, don't worry, you're going to get an idea of what we're talking about by the end of this episode. Everything starts with the spine, and of course we're using the armor core, kind of zigzaggy lines. Just to add a little bit of control to the damage flowing here and there. One of the things you'll notice is, if you didn't see the prototype, this is a long bot relative to a lot of the bots that I've made, and that's because it has to be in order to fit everything that we want. We're building it with the Tier 9 armor blocks, the purple ones, and you'll see some of the red ones on as well. As soon as we get this thing into a few matches, earn some Tier 10 tech points, unlock the Tier 10 armor blocks, then we're going to be switching over to those. I don't know that I'll necessarily put a lot of emphasis on swapping out the purple and the red for the black, but anything that we add once we've unlocked them will be in the Tier 10 blocks because there's just no reason not to. One of the limitations in terms of building the Tier 10 bot that I want is CPU, which only comes from leveling up. We're level 60 out of a maximum of 100, and the difference between where we are and where we could be at level 100 is about 450 to 500 blocks, something like that. That's a lot of blocks. One of the things that I would like to do is have this whole thing shrouded around the sides. So basically, as I mentioned when we're talking about the prototype, is that the vehicle will be point the vehicle to shoot, not aim the guns, because we're going to have armor cladding around the sides and the back and the underside, so that even if you were to aim the guns to the side, it would probably hit the armor cladding before it actually made its way to the enemy. And we're doing that by design, is because hover vehicles can turn very, very quickly, and getting shot in the butt and losing key components really sucks. So we're going to try and protect ourselves from that. That's where the name of the bot came from, the Pretty Hate Machine, is we're designing it, or I'm designing it, to counter a lot of the things that I was finding frustrating in previous bots, and that's getting flanked and losing key components before you even had a chance to realize that you're being attacked and turning around to figure out who's doing it. That sucks. We want to avoid that. And also taking advantage of the strengths of the platform. Like I say, hover vehicles done right can turn very, very quickly, faster than the guns themselves, actually, which is very interesting to note. So it'll take a little bit of practice, but we'll get there. I've noticed in the past, sometimes when I do a build, sometimes when we're doing it in several different parts, is people take a look at an incompleted part at the end of an episode and they critique it as though that's the complete bot. If you have comments and feedback, by all means leave them. I never discourage that, but keep in mind as you're doing so that this isn't going to be the complete bot that we're talking about today. This is going to be the serviceable bot that will earn us the 56 tech points we need to get the armor blocks that we want. So there's definitely already in my mind additions, modifications, and things that we'll be doing that may or may not be reflected in the design that you see. What I can tell you is that the design that you see at the end of this video will be the bot that I've been taking into a few Tier 10 matches already, and I mean just a few, because it was during that time of the day when our team just evaporates in the first 90 seconds for no known reason, and I got frustrated and said we'll do more later. That's all there is to it. So right now, I'm working on the mounts for the hover blades. One of the things when I'm building is I get the driver's seat on, I get the movement, whatever it takes, if it's wheels, if it's legs, whatever, I get those on, then I get the guns on, and then everything else gets added on top of that. Largely because if you're going to run into CPU issues, that's when you're going to find out, is after you've added all of the major components. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you've got so much on the bot that you finally go to add the guns and they don't fit, because you don't have the CPU. So here I'm kind of looking at the mounts for the middle hover blades. You can see the ones in the front and the ones in the back. They're going to be very close to the center of the spine. The ones in the middle, I want a little bit farther out and a little bit shifted towards the back, because there's going to be a lot more stuff in the back than there is in the front. So I want that little bit of extra lift just for stability, and also the little extra width also for stability, even though we're going to have the rudders on, so the placement of the hover blades becomes less important. The Tier 10 hover blades seem to be willing to support pretty much anything that I throw at them, so I'm not necessarily too worried about rolling or anything like that, at least until we start adding the armor cladding to the outside of the vehicle. You can see when they go on that that's exactly what we did. We've got the middle ones are a little bit shifted towards the back, and they're a little bit farther out to the sides. again, when we put things dangling off to the sides of a bot, those are the things that catch all the misses. So if you've got someone who's shooting to try and kill you and they miss, it's the stuff that's dangling off the sides that gets hit, and usually, because of the way that it's dangling, it just gets popped off very easily. So we don't want things dangling off to the sides. We want to kind of control what the enemy has access to in terms of the easily destroyed components of the bot. Guns, it's really difficult to actually properly hide guns of any nature, because if you hide them, you can't shoot at anybody because you'll hit your own bot. Everything else, with a little bit of planning, a little bit of thought, can be concealed to at least some extent and protected. So that's the whole idea. We've got the hover blades on now, and now we need to think about the guns. But before we can put the guns on, we have to get the rudders on, because the rudders that I'm using are freaking massive. They're like the size of wings for all practical intents and purposes. And we have to get them on and happy and situated where they're going to be kind of folded into the back like we had on the prototype before we can start putting the guns on, because otherwise we're going to end up with conflicting blocks, things that don't want to go where we want them to go because big things are in the way. So that's kind of what we're doing here, is trying to set things up so that everything goes where it wants to. Those little V-shaped things, or upside down V-shaped things extending from the driver's seat, that's where the rudders are going to go, and now I'm kind of trying to get an idea of where the guns are going to go. It's kind of silly to do it that way. I should have got the rudders on and then worried about where we were going to place the guns, because then I start looking at this thinking, yeah, we're going to put the back row of guns here, and realizing, oh wait, I'm putting those directly in the path of where the rudders are going to be, so I can't put those there. Let's put the rudders on first, dummy. There we go. See what I mean? They're massive. They're freaking huge. Those are rudders. Those aren't wings. And now we can place the rest of the guns. We can place the platforms that the guns are going to be on, and everything will work much better. So getting a little bit ahead of myself there, but now we put the guns on so that we can start testing the spacing. You can see we were off a little bit. We have to adjust. We're a little bit too far forward and a little too far in. Like I say, one of the things with this bot is we're going to aim the bot, not the guns. So we need to make sure that the guns that are in the back and the middle rows aren't going to hit the guns in front of them on a regular basis, because then that's kind of silly. You're using up a lot of CPU and a lot of space on a bot that has guns that can't ever really do anything. But now you can see, we get everything spaced properly, everything starts to come together. The size of the bot, all of a sudden what used to look like this really long spine doesn't look long anymore. It looks like it's barely long enough, and that's kind of the idea. It's one of those things, you give yourself more space than you think you're going to need because you'll end up needing it. That's just one of the rules of building that I try and go by. And then we just get this platform on, and again, you'll see, and I agree with you if you say those are damn flimsy platforms to be putting plasma cannons on in a tier 10 match. Yes, they are. And my goal when I go into matches is to contribute in some way. I'm not one of these people who supports the idea of taking garbage bots into matches, especially at higher tiers, where people are trying to get dailies done. They've got their own objectives that don't involve necessarily looking at my bot and saying, tee hee hee, that's so entertaining, that makes up for not getting my daily done again. I assume that people would like to be successful, and I would like to contribute to that, and that way I'm being a team player and everybody's happy, theoretically. It doesn't mean we always win, and it doesn't mean my bot is the best bot in the match, but I'm preparing the bot with an eye to contributing, and that's sort of the goal that I have before I take it into a match. So one of the things that I wanted for this bot, in recognizing that it is going to be kind of flimsy, is understanding the role that it would serve best, and one of those is kind of a backline support vehicle. We've got guys that are well suited to being in the front lines that are all in the tier 10 black blocks with that funky red hue. Those guys are the ones that belong in the front, soaking the damage, not because they should be destroyed before me, but because their bots are more capable at this point in my bot's evolution. Me going on the front lines just means I get knocked out early and then I can't contribute. So I'm preparing that in my mind, not to overextend if I can avoid it, not to do stupid things, not to try and take on more than I'm able to contribute to, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a match where everyone else is doing the same thing and it doesn't work. So we're trying to set ourselves up so that these aren't any more flimsy than they have to be. And you can see I'm trying to get some weird shapes in place, and then I suddenly realized that this is just stupid. I'll focus on getting the guns into the proper position relative to the rest of the guns, which is the primary goal, and then see what I can do to offer a little bit of extra support, a little bit of extra armor afterwards, based on how many blocks I have in the CPU that I have remaining. And you can see, again, it results in a pretty flimsy looking stick of prisms holding the gun in place, but I'm hoping that the gunbrella effect will actually help a little bit in protecting the guns in the back. Again, realistically, if I can avoid frontline fighting until I've got some more armor on this vehicle, then I'll be happy. Eventually, I think this vehicle should be quite good as a, competent frontline fighter. Basically terrifying the enemy into perhaps even a paralyzed state. You can see now all the barrels, you can see all of the barrels from the front of the bot, which suggests that they won't be firing into the back of the gun in front of them. That's good. But we really want this guy to contribute. So we're going to put the electroplates on. I realized that I kind of built out one of the arms for the hover blade. The middle arms for the hover blade's kind of wrong. So we have to trim those out a little bit, which is not a big deal. We just take the ones that were dangling off the bottom. They're no longer in the way. We can build those out again a little bit later. And then these guys go on. I don't really expect these guys to soak a lot of damage because they're kind of a mid-tier electroplate. The idea is they're just to kind of block some splash damage, and especially when we get the layer of armor blocks around that, so that any splash damage has to go through the armor blocks, then through the electroplates, then through the center spine or the side spine components, and then to the driver's seat. I think it'll be a lot less likely that we'll be getting those one shots from the plasma splash, because those are just damn obnoxious. And you can see, again, tucking things in as best we can. The super jumbo thrusters. And I mean, that's basically the prototype as we left off in the last episode. The one thing that I wanted to add, just looking at it before we took it into any matches, was some shrouds around the hover blade, and not particularly robust ones. Again, because we have plans for later on that will incorporate shrouds all the way around them instead of just around the blades themselves. We'll have shrouds around the whole vehicle. But really, just for some reason, hover blades have always been that kind of thing where I don't like to leave them visible from the outside of the bot. They're just too much of a tempting target. It's like legs on a walker. If someone can't see your guns, or if they've got the time in their mind to pick and choose what they're going to hit, if they can't get to their guns, the next thing they're going to do is go for your mobility. So hover blades we want to kind of protect as best we can, because they're fairly easy to protect. Wheels are probably the easiest, followed by hover blades, and then wings and walker legs are a nightmare to try and properly protect because they're so large. But in this case, you can see I've actually used some of the white blocks to prototype the shape of these shrouds that I'm putting on, and then we're swapping in the red blocks because we were out of purple. The shrouds themselves take a little bit of fiddling. You don't necessarily have to duplicate the shape that I'm putting around them now, but the one thing that I wanted to do was try and make sure that I wasn't facing the prisms in such a way that they were going to direct damage into the hover blades. So I actually made some mistakes with the prototypes and had to go back and correct them when I went and put the final versions on. So very, very simple kind of design. Not a whole lot to it. About the same as cubes. The same sort of setup with cubes all the way around for the time being. And again, remembering that this is going to be reinforced substantially at some point in the future. So for now, it's just that baseline little bit of protection so that it's not that single stray SMG projectile that knocks off our hover blades. And we'll worry about the rest later. The one other thing that we have to do once we get all these guys into place is we need to think about reinforcing the top area, because right now the driver's seat is pretty much exposed, which is an open invitation to every railgun on a map that stops to think about what they're shooting at before they shoot, to aim just in front of the driver's seat and basically destroy me in one hit whenever they want. We don't like that. We don't want to set them up for that kind of success. We're more than happy to make them work for it a little bit harder. So that's what we have to do once we get all of this done. You can see once we get it sort of set up the first time, it becomes a little bit formulaic. There's nothing particularly difficult about it. The one thing with the red blocks is that sometimes there's two different shades of red. There's the red blocks and there's the red that says this isn't connected properly, so we have to just be a little bit cautious and not just assume that we see red out of the corner of our eye, so everything's okay. And that gives you an idea. We're not going to waste your time showing you the other two hover blades because you've already seen how to do the ones on the other side. Well, we're just going to connect these. You can see where we've got the one prism is kind of not connected. It's not... We don't want to connect it because it's going to give us some sort of advantage. We just don't want it necessarily directed in the wrong direction. So that was one way to do it, was to set it up that way and then connect them with a second pair of blocks. So this will be the basically the shroud over the driver's seat, and also prevent shots from passing basically over the driver's seat to the thrusters or the radar or the rudders or anything like that. And again, we aren't necessarily going to go flimsy. You can see we had some purple blocks left, so we're going to use those where we can, and red where we have to, which is unfortunately going to be in a few spots. But one of the things that I've found, and I think most players who think about it will sort of agree and find themselves thinking in those terms in a match anyways. Suddenly I've forgotten how to talk. The driver's seat, most people put it about 2/3 of the way back from the front of the vehicle. There's a little bit of psychology there. They don't necessarily want it all the way back because then it makes it too vulnerable from the back end, but they don't want it to the front because that's where they expect to be taking the brunt of the damage. So one of the things that I used to do with rail vehicles, if I found a vehicle that was flipped, is I would aim for the middle of the vehicle 2/3 of the way back from the front. So middle side to side, 2/3 of the way back, fire there on the underside, and almost every single time it would destroy the vehicle because there's only so much protection you can put in the bottom of the vehicle before your driver's seat is basically like a flag way up in the air. That having been said, if you can build something around your driver's seat in a way that obscures it, people don't feel so confident about going after that section of the vehicle because they don't know exactly where it is. They have a pretty good idea based on what they see on the vehicle, but they don't know exactly where it is, so they're going to go after things like guns, they're going to go after other components that are a sure thing, and worry about the driver's seat after. So that's one of the things, even if the shroud that we build isn't necessarily all that robust, it's still going to be more helpful than not having anything there. So that's why we're doing that. And that's about where we're going to leave it. This is about what we take into matches now. The tier 10, earning the tier 10 tech points someday. If you have any comments or feedback, like I say, it's not done. I don't know it's not done. There's other plans that we're going to be going. But if you have things that you like or don't like, feel free to leave them. If you want to be notified when I add the next video, which is going to be match footage of this sucker getting its ass kicked, you can subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on the social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and take care.